Continuing right along. Chapter 19, verse 4. Vayikra, chapter 19, verse 4. What page are we on, Aaron?
653.
653? Baruch Hashem. So it says in the pasuk, Al tifnu el ha'elilim, do not turn to false gods. Ve'elohei ma'asecha lo ta'asu lachem, do not make gods of molten images. Ani Hashem Elokechem, I am Hashem your God. What does this mean? Do not turn to false gods of dumb, to worship them, Rashi says. Elilim lashon el. The word elilim is related to el. Hilohu chashuv, as though it's considered as though it's not important. Ve'elohei ma'asecha lo ta'asu lachem, do not make molten images. Chilatan elilim heim. Imata poneh achrem sofchan la'asot on Elohim. No, I'm doing chumash, just my commentaries that I used. Yeah. At first, they're elilim, but if you keep turning to them, you make them into your false gods. It's telling us that people don't appreciate the power of the attraction. Oh, Jeff, I'm going to forward you an article, Jeff. You can read it on your phone, right? Yeah, you'll read it on your phone.
Think about yeah.
Okay, so that's the power of the false gods, that people think, oh, we're stronger than the false gods. Well, they're not going to tempt us, but in the end, false gods will tempt you. You shall not make them for yourself. Yes, Jerry, you had a question.
Yes, molten. Why limit yourself to molten gods? Molten implies metal. You could have gods made of wood or wood. I'm wondering why the pasuk implies molten, or at least the English translation molten, implying metal.
Not necessarily.
Let's see what molten means.
Could be also,
What?
it doesn't have to be metal. Be poured into the cast and shaped lava. That's right. Any kind of mud.
Let's see what I'm going to look up the definition of molten. It means something of melt. Molten is the past particle of melt.
Something else.
Yeah,
Okay.
something melted.
Wax.
Something cast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily metal.
Yeah. So my point is, what about wooden idols?
Right. So elsewhere the Torah talks about wooden idols. Here, why does it just say molten specifically? I'm not sure. I don't know. But elsewhere it talks about wooden idols and stone idols.
I think it does because they were quickly made and distributed, and that's why they're pointing that out. Because that's what the opposition was doing, was handing out different statues that were quickly made and cheap and could be given out. That's the reason for molten.
Yeah, but it's a good question that you're raising. Okay, when it says you shall not make, you shall not make for yourself, it means do not make them for others, nor should others make them for you. If you say it means don't make it for yourself, but others can make it for you. All right, Kvar Nemer, it already says, you can't make for yourself. Neither yours nor of others. Okay, the next verse. V'chi tizbachu zevach shlamim la'Hashem, v'ritzonchem tizbachuhu. When you make a sacrifice, a peace offering to God, v'ritzonchem tizbachuhu. So this is a very strange, what does it mean? It means you shall slaughter it for your will, or to appease you. What does that mean? Rashi says, it teaches us, this passage was taught to tell us that the slaughter should only be with the intent that it's eaten. Within this time. Meaning to say, it's telling us that there's a specific time in which you're allowed, when you slaughter the animal, it's not telling us that you have to eat it within a certain time. It's telling us that your intent when you slaughter the animal has to be to eat it within a certain time. It means that your intent when you make the sacrifice needs to be to eat it within the proper time, because it already tells us elsewhere that there's a time limit. So this is not telling us the time limit. Right. It's already stated elsewhere that there's a time limit for eating it. So this verse is to tell us that when you sacrifice it, your intent has to be correct. That even if you sacrifice it with the wrong intent, but you end up eating it right away, not after the time limit has expired, you're in violation of this law. That's the point. That if you sacrifice it with the wrong intent, you're done.
Doesn't say burned in the temple.
What?
It doesn't say burned in the Mishkan. It just says burned. So you could take it, you would eat it, consume it outside all night or whatever, and then burn the leftovers on the third day. Is that correct interpretation?
So no, you only have one day. You have to.
This point's different. This point is about where.
Oh, where you have the shlamim offering, you can only eat in Jerusalem.
That's what happened.
But if you had the wrong intent to eat it outside the proper place, that's well, you wouldn't have this. Well, yeah, once they had the temple, you can't eat it outside Jerusalem. Yeah, so that the outset of the slaughter should be with the intent to bring contentment to God, that it should be an appeasement for God. That if you shall think a thought of invalidation, then it will not, meaning to say, if you have an improper thought, it will not be a pleasing sacrifice before God. To appease for you, Rashi says in French, apaiement. Apaiement. I don't know. Appeasement. That's what it means. Apaiement. How's your French, Rabbi Yosef? You speak French? You're living in Canada? No? Okay. This is the simple explanation. And our rabbis taught from here, the mit'asek b'kodshim shepasul. It's to teach us that let's say you were bringing this out, you were just dealing with an animal, you weren't planning on doing anything, you happened to slaughter it. But that disqualifies it. Mit'asek b'kodshim, that's disqualified. You have to have the intent to slaughter. Okay. V'im heyachol yeyachel bayom ha'shlishi, and if you'll eat it on the third day, pigohu, it is rejected. Lo yiratzeh, it will not be pleasing. So but here, look what Rashi says. It can't be that it's to tell us about eating it beyond this time, because we already said that. So therefore, it already told us that it's not to eat it beyond the proper time. So what's it meant to be teaching us? Is to tell us now, as Mordechai was talking, that you can't slaughter it with the intent to eat it outside of the proper place, i.e., outside of Jerusalem. I might think that the punishment for having the wrong intent about where to eat it is karet. Says the verse, the soul that eats it shall bear its sin. From it, but not that which is related to it. So therefore, the punishment is not karet for this. And then it says, what's this called? This is called pigul. If you have the wrong intent to eat it beyond the proper time, or you have the intent to eat it beyond the proper place, that intent makes the korban classified, the sacrifice classified as, pigul. What does the word pigul mean? Rashi tells us, mitoav, repulsive, like umerak pigulin kleihem, the gravity of that which is. The gravy of that which is repulsive. What?
Like toeva?
Yeah. Marak is soup. The soup of their, which is repulsive in their vessels. Marak in modern Hebrew is soup.
Soup?
Marak in modern Hebrew is soup.
Bad soup?
No.
Oh.
But here it's telling us that the soup of their vessels is abominable. It's a verse from Isaiah. Oh, Moshe, how you doing today?
Good.
Yeah. Okay. So that verse then tells us, if somebody eats this animal, he'll bear the iniquity of its sin. He has Kodesh Hashem Chilal, because he's desecrated the sanctity of God. And the soul is cut off from its people. So Rashi says, basically, this refers to nosar. This refers to a person who had the right intent, but ate the meat after it was expired. Means to say they're two separate prohibitions. Okay. Ironically, the punishment, let me ask you a question. Which do you think has a more severe punishment? Eating the meat beyond the expired time, or having the intent to eat the meat beyond the expired time, but eating it within the proper time? Which is a more severe punishment?
Number one.
So the more severe punishment is somebody who has the wrong intent, even if you do the right action. But if you had the right intent and the wrong action, that's not as bad as if you had the wrong intent and the right action. The punishment for actually eating it beyond the proper time is not correct. That's what Rashi tells us. Okay.
So can we compare it to Nisuch Hamayim? Like that they killed Agrippas because he poured it on his legs instead of on the altar?
Yeah, well, you can compare anything, but
I mean that the philosophy that you're so against what the Chachamim said that you're doing something deliberately or not doing it, but have that mindset.
okay. I mean, it's a good point. It's a good comparison. Okay, Baruch Hashem, and now we go to the next verse. Totally unrelated, it seems, apparently. When you harvest the crops of your land, do not finish off the corner of your field to harvest it. Meaning to say, when you harvest your field, don't harvest the corner. And the gleanings of your harvest don't collect. What are the gleanings? And what's the? No, I'm asking. I'm going to say what's the definition here? What's the definition here? What's the definition of a corner? Rashi says you have to leave it over sheyaniach pe'eya b'sof sadeh. You have to leave the corner over of his field for the poor people.
Oh, Ruth.
Like Ruth. But let me ask you a question. What's the size of the corner you have to leave over? How much?
It could be one stock. It's the very, very tip.
What's the amount of the corner? What's the size of the corner that you need to leave over?
Isn't it like a 50th or 60th or 40th?
So that's the truma. The truma is rabbinically a 140 from 50 with 60. How much of the corner do you have to leave over?
Like a 4x4,
What?
like 4x4 feet.
So the Mishnah and Peah, which we say every morning in our prayers, we start off our morning prayers by saying, Elu dvarim she'ein lahem shiur. These are certain things that there's no specific measurement. And the first thing in that Mishnah is hapeah, the corner. There's no measurement given. Peah, the peah, there's no amount. You can do as big a corner or a small corner as you want.
But the ethics of it are that you leave enough so that those who are hungry will be able to gather enough food.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you're supposed to try to do the mitzvah in a nice way. So there's guidance, but the technical law is that it's whatever you want. It's like when you want to make a donation, a poor person comes to you and asks you for a donation. Is there an amount that you have to give? No, you can give whatever you want. And then it says, Veleka Ketzircha, the gleanings. What is this? Rashi says, Shiboim Hanoshrim B'Shas Haksira Achas Ushtayim. That if when you're harvesting, one or two stalks fall to the ground. If it's one or two stalks, that's called a gleaning, you have to leave there. But if it is shalosh, but if it's three, ain't on leket, they're not gleanings. And you can come and get them. Okay. Then it,
Pretty subjective.
what?
I think that's completely subjective on his part,
On whose part?
Rashi's part.
No, Rashi's not, it's Rashi's quoting the Mishnah. So that's, I guess that's the Mishnah's part is the oral law. They either had a tradition or they calculated based upon their assessment what's going to be considered a gleaning versus a bundle. Because you're allowed to take a bundle. So what's the definition of a bundle? Okay, so then it states, verse 10.
These are the unharvested portions of the field. Is that correct?
The gleanings are the types of when you're harvesting, if a couple of things fall to the ground, a stalk falls to the ground. Let's say they're coming through with the combine, and then when they pick up the stuff, the combine misses one and it falls to the ground, and then another one. And if it was one or two together, that's a gleaning and you can't go back to get it. But if it was three, you can go back to get it.
Does that mean when you make the machine, the harvesting machine, you have to have a certain minimum to make sure it doesn't?
You don't have to worry about it. They don't leave a lot of stuff.
Oh, they leave it out.
They do. They
I've watched plenty of films. My favorite program is Maryland Farm and Harvest. I've watched the machines.
and
A lot of it's on the ground, never gets picked up. The machine just rolls through.
Goes over.
so they have to let the
Efficiency for.
they have to let the poor people come in and get it.
Maryland, they could.
Must be a certain degree that you can leave.
They plow it back under, it's actually what they do,
Oh, it's good fertilizer.
fertilize.
So they use it as fertilizer. Okay. Now it states the karmecha lo ta'alel. When it's your grapevine, don't harvest the young grapes. Uferet karmecha lo ta'akate. Don't gather the fallen grapevines. La'nivu ager tazovotam. Leave them for the poor, the foreigner. Ani Hashem Elokechem. I am Hashem your God. Rashi states, Lo te'olel, lo titel oelut sheba. Do not take the young grapes that are in a vineyard. Ve'en nikarot, and they are identifiable. What's the definition of a young grape? Ezehu oleut. What's the definition of a grape? Kol she'en lo katef, v'lo nataf. Anything that does not have a shoulder or a drop. And the footnote tells us a mature cluster of grapes is formed by many smaller clusters growing on small branches of a main shoot. The upper clusters weigh down one another like a man leaning on his front shoulder. The lowest clusters hang straight down and resemble drops dripping from the bunch. So if it resembles a drop dripping, then it's no good. It has to be not even at that stage yet. Okay. Uferet karmecha. You shall not gather the fallen fruit of your vineyard. Gargare anavim hanoshrim b'shas betzira. These are single grapes that fall off at the time of the picking. You can't pick that up either. Ani Hashem Elokechem. I'm Hashem, your God. Rashi says, Dayan li pareh. I am a judge who pays. Ve'eni gove mikem el nefashot. And I take real punishment. I take your lives. As it states, Al tigzal dal. Do not rob a poor man. Tiariv Hashem rivam v'kavaz koveim nefesh. Don't rob a poor man, for Hashem will fight their fight and despoil the lives of those who despoil them. God gets angry when we steal from a poor man.
So if so it doesn't have the corners, you've got to leave the field, but it's talking about now, like the fallen fruit and clusters of grapes. So if they fall, say, in the middle of the field where they're being gathered, does that mean the poor person can come into the field, or anybody can come into the field? Or does it
Yeah.
have to be down
The poor oh no, the poor person come into the middle of the field and take the stuff that falls off the clusters. Yeah, he or she is allowed to, and now they can't stop them. Now the verse tells us, "Lo tignovu, do not steal. V'lo techachashu, do not deny falsely. V'lo teshakru ish b'amito, and each man shall not lie to his fellow." Lo tignovu, do not steal. Azhara lagone mamon. This is a negative commandment for somebody who steals money. This is not a commandment, but now you're asking the obvious question, Moshe, which is we already were told not to steal in the 10 Commandments. So what's the difference? Why does this have to be told again? So what's the answer? Remember it, Akiva? Aaron, you remember?
What has to say specifically here not to steal?
Yeah, when it already tells us.
Yes, there was kidnapping.
Right, very good, Akiva. So Akiva tells us the answer is what Rashi's about to say. This is what Rashi says. Asaro lagone mamon. Here, when it says don't steal, it means don't steal money. Avalo tignov shabaseret hadibro. When it says don't steal in 10 Commandments, asaro lagone nefashos. That's a commandment not to steal a soul. You hear that? That taking a hostage is a violation of the 10 Commandments. If you take a kidnap a person, then you're liable for death by court. So, meaning to say, so kidnapping, according to this Rashi, is punishable by death.
So there's two meanings to the
Well, it means do not steal. In both cases, it means do not steal, but in the context of other capital punishments, it means do not steal a person. In this context, hold on, I have to tell my. In this context,
This also extends line. Culture reasons. We should not lie.
hold on.
So some extrapolation by the rounders. No, by a God, we extrapolate. Because the God is bringing a footnote to broaden this concept.
Okay, so that's the difference. Hold on. Okay, do not deny falsely. I think we'll pick that up tomorrow so we can dive in mincha at this point. We'll have to stop here.